Hello and welcome. It is playoff time for the Vintage Super League. I'm Randy Bueller, joined by Luis Scott Vargas. Luis is going to be playing later. Welcome, Luis.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to play today, which I was hoping to not have to after last week, or before last week, rather.
Right. Yeah, you've got the tiebreaker game against Steve Menendy. And so you guys play one match, just a normal best 2 out of 3 match. The winner gets the 1 seed. The loser has to play in the semifinal.
Yep.
But first, we get the quarterfinal match. This is going to be Eric Froehlich against David Williams. They're going to play best 2 out of 3 matches. So we could have as many as 9 games of Magic between these guys before we figure out who's going to go to the semis, who's going to advance.
And Steve and I are just playing one match, correct?
Yeah. The tiebreakers are not multi-match long.
Gotcha.
This has been such a fun season. I can't wait to see what's in store for the playoffs. I'm particularly interested to see what decks people are going to choose to play.
Oh, I know too.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. You've submitted your deck. I know I can't ask you as much as I might love to hear what you're up to. I don't know if you have any predictions for what you're expecting anybody else to play.
Honestly, I don't know. I think everyone in the top 4 has a pretty wide range except for me. And honestly, I can play a lot of different decks as long as they have, Ancestral Recall and Force of Will. But I wouldn't be surprised to see almost anything here. So, I think that there's a couple levels of metagaming going on with, Delver being one of the strongest decks, if not the strongest deck, but still soft to some decks. It'll be interesting to see what people ended up with.
I completely agree. I mean, you talk about Delver being one of the strongest decks now. That's coming out of Eternal Weekend? A lot of people are looking at that. Do you think that? I mean, is it so good that Wizards should be looking at restrictions, or is it just okay? Now there's another good vintage deck.
I don't think they should be looking at restrictions quite yet. I think there's a possibility that by the time the next ban restricted list update happens, which is in a couple months, we'll want that Treasure Cruise to be restricted. But right now, I'm happy to let it play. I mean, it's a good deck, but Treasure Cruise isn't good against stacks, for example. It's not good against workshops. The deck itself got kind of trounced by Oath at Eternal Weekend, so I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up just fitting into the metagame and not dominating it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Actually, I think that if you look at what are the best unrestricted cards in Vintage, it's not as good as Mishra's Workshop. Right? It's not as good or as impactful as Force of Will. I think it's good enough that Delver has become this tier 1 archetype that people are going to have to deal with. But like you say, it's got bad matchups. So
yep.
I don't know that they actually do need to muck around with Vintage at all.
It is funny when you have a spot like now where, Ancestral Visions is, I think, worse than Treasure Cruise, and Treasure Cruise is unbanned and modern. And Gifts Ungiven, I think, is a lot worse than Treasure Cruise, and that's restricted as well. So
that's fair. Yeah, and I'm not saying Vintage is perfect. I still think they should do something to take a little bit of the teeth out of the Shops deck, personally. But we'll see. All right, we are in the process of getting set up for the first match. Like we said, it's going to be Eric Froehlich against David Williams. These guys are housemates. They are longtime friends. They're the 2 professional poker players in the league. These guys have been hanging out together. They've tested together for all the weeks where they weren't scheduled to play each other. But they did not work together for this one, as far as I understand. I mean, I think I actually saw Eric in the chat earlier saying they did not work together.
Right. And professional poker players were, I guess, tied for the best demographic in terms of making the top 4. It was because they both had 2 out of 2, as well as the Pork Bun Oath also had 2 out of 2. That would be
the Pork Bun Oath. I see.
Right. There's actually a lot of ways you can split all these people, so I'm really mostly just joking. I mean, there are a lot of subdivisions that you could make that include 2 to 4 people in this group of 10 people.
Sure.
But I chose one that includes me and Ephro. So
of course. How was the Grand Prix? You played with Eric at the Grand Prix.
I did. I played with Eric and Paul Chion, and we're pretty consistent. We went 11-3 and got 9th. We needed to go 4-1 on day 2 or 5-0 on day 2, and we went 4-1. We went 12-3, 11-3, and 12-2 are our 3 Grand Prix finishes so far. So
wow.
I guess I'm not. I would have rather made top 4, but I think it was a good performance. So I'm not too unhappy.
It's hard to feel bad about 9th. I know you guys really wanted to get Chi on another invite back to the Pro Tour.
That was the main goal. Yeah, he's playing in a PTQ next weekend. He's going to play in the Magic Online PTQs. He's actually streaming like 4 or 5 days a week now, so he's playing a ton of Magic. And, Chian has 10 pro points now after the Pro Tour plus the 2 Grand Prix, so he's got a pretty good shot at hitting silver even later in the season, even if maybe he misses a Pro Tour in the middle of the season, but he's going to play at, Grand Prix San Antonio, so I would be surprised if he didn't play more PTs this year, even if he's not necessarily going to play in the next one. I think I'd be pretty surprised if he actually didn't play the last 2. So we'll see.
Makes sense.
But the Grand Prix was awesome. I mean, just the top 4 was very strong, and we got Matt Nass back on the Pro Tour.
Indeed,
he's a member of Team Channel Fireball, and he's going to test with us again because he's now back on the Pro Tour. So
very nice. Another Seattle guy too, Jesse Hampton. I was happy to see him do well.
Yeah, and I'm sure you guys talked about it in the coverage, but Jesse had a 7-hour drive by himself from North Carolina.
Oh, that story is totally worth telling again. I don't know how much of the audience overlaps. If you guys didn't hear this story in the Grand Prix coverage, dude is flying to Nashville from Seattle, and there's a snowstorm. I mean, it's the South, so it doesn't take a lot of snow to count as a snowstorm. The flight can't land in Charlotte, where he was supposed to connect to Nashville. So they redirect it to Durham and get more fuel. They finally get to Charlotte, and it's 1 a.m. The connections are all gone. There's no way for him to get to Nashville. This is a Friday this is happening, so it's like 1 a.m. Saturday morning. And Charlotte is 400 miles from Nashville, but he rents a car and just starts driving through the Appalachians, through the snowstorm, and arrives, doesn't have time to go to the hotel, just literally drives straight to the site, shows up at the site, and now sits down to build his deck for Team Sealed.
Yeah, he showed up 10 minutes into deck building.
He showed up 10 minutes into deck building. I didn't actually hear that part. I had the impression he got there before that. Wow, 10 minutes into deck building. That's insane.
Yeah, and then they, off no sleep and driving all night, they ran off I believe they went X2 on day 1 and then didn't lose on day 2. They went 401, I think. So.
Wow. Yeah, awesome story. And then they wind up winning the Grand Prix. So he's back on the Pro Tour. The team's happy. I'm sure he's gotten some sleep since then, but it sounds like we got some Magic to go watch now. So
sounds good.
Back to the Vintage Super League. First match is Eric Froehlich against David Williams. We've been talking about the fact that these guys have worked together. They both tied at 5-4 in the regular season, and it turns out there's only 4 guys that got to 5 wins. So that was good enough to tie for the 3 seed. It's a 3 seed and a 4 seed. Didn't really need to break that tie since they were going to be playing each other in the first round of the playoffs either way. You see the match score there. That's going to get filled in with W's and L's as these guys play out their matches. First guy to win 2 matches gets to go to the semifinals.
And who then plays the loser of myself and Steve to make the finals.
Precisely. All right. Now we get to find out what they're playing.
Yeah, this is a big moment for me, too. I mean, these are both my potential opponents, so...
Absolutely, yeah. These guys will be playing the same decks. All 4 of our playoff competitors have now submitted their decks. They're going to be playing that same one deck for all of the playoff rounds, whether that's 1 match or 3 matches. It's the same deck all the way through the playoffs. So, yeah, I'm curious. Luis is curious. David Williams looks like a Grixis-y control deck. I see 2 Dark
That's what it looks like.
Is that an Echoing Truth?
Yeah, 2 Dark Confidants, Echoing Truth, Bolt, Force of Will. This is a very solid hand.
Sure.
And
Eric's, I see Black Lotus. Is that Abrupt Decay?
Well,
wow, he's got a Jace, so he's clearly control-ish as well.
Though he's only got Lotus as his only mana source, and he has Preordain and Jace, but...
And Time Walk.
Given the fact that if he draws any mana source, that's a turn 1 Jace with double force backup, that would be tempting, but looks like Eric is...
he cashed it in. Who was on... Dave's on the play, isn't he?
Looks like Dave is on the play, yes.
Oh, I would have kept that on the draw.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm with you. I mean, that's a little greedy. It's definitely risky in the sense that you're saying that your game comes down to that first draw phase, but you get the Preordain.
Yeah. Well, the problem is if you crack Lotus to Preordain, you're kind of giving up on Jace unless you hit a 2 mana source of some kind.
Oh, that's fair. You have to top deck exactly a land to do the turn 1 Jace.
Yeah, if you don't draw a land, you're not in great shape. Dave drew a Mox a turn too late here. Had he drawn Mox on turn 1, he would have had a turn 1 Bob. Instead, he has a turn 2 Bob, but that's not different than what he could have had. Whereas Eric's got a library, so even though Dave is going to resolve a Bob here. Eric's also drawing an extra card every turn.
Right. And here we go. Dark Confidant. And I don't think Eric would force this even if he had the ability to, because the library essentially counteracts it.
Yeah, it comes pretty close. I mean, the library does cost Eric mana, and it doesn't attack for 2 every turn, so the advantage is certainly on Dave's side, but still, it's an extra card every turn. Eric's got a pretty disruptive hand with Thoughtseize and Mental Misstep, but they don't line up against Dark Confidant right now.
It'll help with the library plan either. Ooh, Fast Bond.
Fast Bond could not have been a bad draw. He's already got a Gush in hand, and he's got Vamp.
Jeez.
So he could definitely be in a spot where he could... he could go off this turn if he really wanted to. He could lead with Fast Bond and see if Dave counters it, and then Thoughtseize. He could also wait an additional turn by just Thoughtseizing this turn, which is the slightly more conservative play. He's not under a huge clock. You don't really want to get Dark Confidant going, but waiting a turn isn't going to kill you.
He's got the misstep for any misstep on his Fast Bond.
Yeah.
That makes the Fast... leading with Fast Bond seems risky, but with misstep, it makes it a lot less risky, I guess.
Yeah, is Dave going to force a will your Fast Bond is the question.
Right. He might. We'll find out. If he leads with Thoughtseize, he can clear the Force of Will, but if he leads with Fast Bond, he can explode. That is not a land capable of casting Fast Bond.
No, it looks like Eric's going to wait an additional turn here. This also lets him library next turn before he starts everything off.
True.
This is a good hand for Eric to see. He's going to, presumably take the Force of Will, leaving Dave with a hand that doesn't interact all that well against Fast Bond. Eric is going to 17, then 15, then the Bolt. It makes him essentially 12, with presumably facing down 2 Dark Confidants. So that does leave Eric, with his life total slightly under attack. But I think that Gush Bond is probably going to outrace it, especially with a Tinker in hand. Though Eric is aware of that Echoing Truth.
Yes. Yeah, Echoing Truth definitely takes the sting out of his Tinker. Yeah, now what does Dave do? He just plays another Dark Confidant and starts swinging. Wasteland off of the Bob. Wow. Damage there.
Revealing Wasteland and then flipping Demonic Tutor is not bad.
Not at all. Wow, what does he get?
If he gets Ancestral, it's not great because of a Mental Misstep.
Right.
It's actually a legitimate question which land he Wastelands. I think the library is the safest. You could try to outrace library and just play another Bob here, and just Wasteland the Underground Sea. But Dave is not gonna go for the riskier play there. Not that I think he should have.
He doesn't know that much about Eric's deck either. He's seen Underground Sea, library, Thoughtseize. So it looks control-ish.
Yeah.
I think against this unknown sort of somewhat control-ish deck, he doesn't know it's a Gush Bond list.
Oh, there's a second Gush.
Jeez.
So Eric has free reign to basically do whatever he wants now. He can even... He doesn't know the Fast Bond's going to resolve yet, though he's got to suspect it is. Dave's got one unknown card, and it has to be just Force of Will, or not even Spell Pierce because he has Misstep. It has to just be Force of Will to stop Fast Bond from resolving.
Yep.
So Eric can play Fast Bond. He could Vamp before Gushing, but I think you want to use at least one Gush first to see if you draw relevant cards, then decide what to Vamp for.
I'll buy that. What do you think of Dave's decision to do nothing with his DT and just play out the second Bob?
I like it. What's he DTing for that really is going to get him ahead here? You can DT for Ancestral, but playing a Bob is, I think, close enough and plays around Misstep. And if you have 2 Bobs out, next turn you DT for Time Walk, and you can put up a really threatening turn.
Sure.
So Eric also, before even casting Fast Bond, he could actually just cast Gush, which is a pretty normal play too. So I imagine he'll float like blue-green or something, or black-green. Run out the Gush. Though he could just run out Fast Bond to see if it resolves first, and then if Dave does have a counter, you can just Gush in response to try to hit something. He could Vamp first if he's got something in particular he wants to get.
Well, he's decided to Vamp first. What do you think he's getting?
In this spot, I don't know. He could get another Gush. He could get You could get a Forcible, but that seems kind of defensive. I don't know if I love doing that. Looks like he just got Yogwell.
That's good times.
Yeah, Yogwell, I mean, if you can go off with a decent life total, Yogwell, Fastball, Gush can end the game. It depends. I mean, it doesn't look like there are any young Pyromancers here. There might be,
We
but
haven't seen red mana yet, right?
but we've seen Abrupt Decay and Thoughtseize, which indicates
Bug.
more black cards. So it'll be interesting to see how he ends up finishing things off.
I wonder if he plays a Tendrils.
That'd be the first Tendrils that we've seen since the first week, right? When Steve
Martell
and Josh and Martell all had Tendrils, and then you played it in the second week.
I had Tendrils in my Oath deck, yeah.
There have been a couple Tendrils so far.
I mean, this is a spot where it would just win the game.
Especially the Soul Ring. It's good. I mean, Ephro's got to worry about the Lightning Bolt. He knows he's on a little bit of a clock because of that. He can Mental Misstep it to save 1 point of damage, or if he has a blue floating. And then Tinker, presumably for Lotus if he's setting up Yogwell. So, yeah, drawing Soul Ring was pretty good.
Wow, look at him just go. Does get the Lotus.
And he doesn't have enough life to really care about putting extra fetches in the graveyard first. In fact, at this point, he wants to never sack a fetch. He'd rather just keep replaying the non-fetch lands.
Right. Where is he going with all this, though?
Presumably a way to finish the game.
Right. We haven't seen anything.
But he can vamp and then gush and has a bunch of mana. So, it wouldn't surprise me if he does have a way to end the game given all that. I mean, he could also set up Tinker Time Walk if he's got a Tinker target that can kill Bob. Or kill Dave, who has all the Bobs.
Kill Dave, yeah. Yeah, Blightsteel on the Time Walk would certainly get the job done.
And again, Ephro knows that Dave has Lightning Bolt Echoing Truth, so there's only one card left.
And it's not Force of Will, or he wouldn't have gotten this far down this chain.
Yeah, I imagine that is true. Yawgmoth's Will is the ultimate Force of Will test.
Exactly.
So Dave's taking advantage of Ephro not having an extra land in play to bolt him here.
Oh, so he can't pay for a Mental Misstep, for example?
Right, or cast a Flusterstorm without sacking Lotus. The Ephro can Mental Misstep it, going to 6, Vamp Resolve's going to 4, Gush, Replay Land's going to 2, Gush.
He could also stack the Lotus for blue here and pay for a Mental Misstep.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Depending on, he can Gush twice anyway, so paying for Mental Misstep also works, and he can get double black if Tendrils is the card he's going for here.
Yeah, because the Gush lets him pick up and replay black land.
Tendrils would win him the game right here.
Yeah, and he did, in fact. He sacked the Lotus for blue, so he Mental Misstep. He didn't take any damage from that Lightning Bolt. Vampire Tutor has resolved. Gush out of the graveyard.
And there's a Tendrils of Agony.
There is Tendrils of Agony. Wow. Tendrils of Agony. Storm count is written on the tendrils and typed. It's a little small for my eyes. I'm sure it's plenty.
Yeah, especially since Dave also cast a spell there.
Sure.
I mean, Ephro could have, cast 2 or 3 more spells this turn if he really needed to, but presumably he did not.
Wow. There you go. Eric Froehlich.
Yeah,
with a game.
Looks like a turn 3 Tendrils win.
Well, yeah, was it turn 3 or was it turn 2?
He played Library turn 1, activated turn 2, 3. Played a land, and then got it wasted. Little did Dave know, Ephro would way rather his Library get wasted than his Underground Sea there. Though I don't think that's a play you can really make from Dave's point of view. So.
Yeah, that's a great point. I completely agree. Dave, I think, was correct to waste the Library. But now he knows he's up against Gush. He knows he's up against Fast Bond with a Tendrils kill. I mean, it basically looked like Martell's list. I mean, I'm sure it's got Khans of Tarkir cards in it, though, right? It's got to have either Cruise and or Dig, I would think.
Presumably Dig. Dig, I think, is the more effective card when you're digging for, individual cards that have a high impact.
Sure.
Like kind of like Josh's list from last week. But it's got
It did
Thoughtseize
look
and
like the way
Decay,
Josh
so,
was going off last week, that's for sure.
yeah. And what Josh did last week, Josh is still playing a combo deck. His combo is to play Pyromancer, then go off, whereas a Tendrils-based deck is supposed to go off, then play Tendrils. The upside of Pyromancer is it's actually very good even in games when you're not going off, when you just play it and play like 3 or 4 spells, whereas Tendrils is just a blank. The downside is what we saw when Josh was going off against Dave, where he couldn't find the Pyromancer until way too late in the chain.
Yeah, he needed it at the beginning. That's certainly true.
Yeah, beginning or middle, actually, but at the end it was just too much.
Wow.
So, first Tendrils win kicking off.
Yeah, no, that was not what I was expecting. Pretty interesting. Do we have the? I think we have a bracket we can show you guys just to get everybody onto the same page about how this is going to work out. You see Eric and Dave playing here, the 3 versus 4. They aren't actually, Eric isn't actually seeded ahead of Dave. It's just they tied for the 3 and 4 seed. So they play here. The winner of this is going to take on either Luis or Steve Menendian. The 2 of them will be playing their tiebreaker match for the 1 seed after this match is over. So the winner between Luis and Steve has a bye into the finals, having won the regular season, and the loser will be sitting in the semis, waiting for either Eric or David.
And then next week we have the semis and the finals.
No, next week is just the semis.
Oh, I see. So I'm playing for a week off, too?
Yes. Yeah, you get a bye week if you get the 1 seed.
I don't know if that's great or not.
I'm sure the guys would be happy to have you show up and do commentary for that semifinal. You don't have to take the week off.
Yeah. It would be great if Vintage Daily Event started firing. It sounds like they're going to start running on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and hope to get more people. Ooh, we've got some interesting cards in both players' hands here.
Oath of Druids.
Lots of them. So many of them.
4 copies? I mean, obviously that draw is terrible with 4 copies of Oath of Druids. That's insane.
Yeah,
Eric seems to have a spicy one.
No, not a single mana source yet.
Wow. Yeah. There's his first 2 mana sources at 5. It's not a great 5, but you probably keep it with 2 lands, right?
Yeah, and one good thing about this hand is Eric has double mental misstep, so you can misstep the Deathrite Shaman and misstep the Grafdigger's Cage. The Cage, which Dave brought in to stop Yogg-Will, but also just hits Oath.
Hilarious.
Which means that if Eric just draws an Oath of Druids, he could easily just win on turn 2.
Well, he's not going to let this Deathrite resolve.
Yeah, presumably once an Oath is in play, though, if he has Orchard in his deck, he's going to be able to find one. And at some point, Dave has to play a creature, given how his deck looks. It doesn't look like Dave necessarily even has like anything like Vault Key in it. Like, after seeing last game, I would have imagined that Dave could be like a Grixis control deck, but now he's got Deathrite Shaman, Dak Faden, Wasteland. It feels like he's maybe even a Null Rod deck, like a bug aggro deck, or with red that has a lot of creatures and disruption spells and no really broken finishes.
What's your theory for no broken finishes?
If you're playing cards like Wasteland and Dark Confidant and Deathrite Shaman, you're going to have it makes it a lot less likely that you will have cards like Time Vault in your deck or set up big Yawgmoth's Wills. So it's kind of interesting now whether Ifra just goes for the Oath or not.
Yeah.
Because Dave doesn't have a creature out, and you don't have an Orchard yet if you have Orchards. So it looks like Ifra is just going to run it, though. And Dave is going to force it. He has to. Though Dave could get greedy and not force it because of Grafdigger's Cage, in which point Ifra will misstep the Grafdigger's Cage, at which point Dave's going to have to force back.
Force will that.
Yeah.
I mean, he might be better off defending his Grafdigger's Cage instead of fighting each of the Oaths, right?
It's true.
The 1 cage shuts down all Oaths.
The disadvantage to that is if Eric does have a card like Abrupt Decay. Not that Dave has seen that yet, but if Eric did have that Oath goes on the stack, you just decay the cage in response, you end up in a pretty good spot.
Well, anyone who was worried about people just running back their regular season vintage decks need not have worried. These guys have both brought some spice to the table.
Dave just going for the Dak Faden here.
And seems to work.
I kind of favor just wastelanding the Trop because Ifra Mulligan only has 3 cards in hand, but Dak Faden does get you going a little better. Yeah, Dave with Abrupt Decay in his deck, I really don't think that Dave's running a particularly broken deck. He's running like a kind of a traditional like
Value
four
deck.
color control deck. He could have some amount of potentially have a Yoggle in his deck, but I don't think it's incredibly likely.
Yeah, no, this does seem to be a 4-color sort of value creature incremental advantage style deck.
Dak Vaden is a combo with second Dak Vaden.
Certainly gives you something to do with it.
One reason that Dave didn't Wasteland the Trop, which I actually agree with now that I think about it more, is Ephraim played Gushes in game 1. I really hate Wastelanding into Gushes.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's going to try it here.
Yeah.
Wow, how sick would the Gush be?
It would have been real good there. Especially if they would have activated the library. But unfortunately for Ephraim, he does not have it. Dave has Abrupt Decay as well in his deck. He's actually pretty well set up against Oath. You'd be curious to see if Ephraim boards it out. Yeah, it's actually kind of funny that Dave had Decay in his deck. I guess killing Fastbond is a thing, but...
Now there's the Gush. Slightly late. 7-card hand would have been much better here.
Dave is definitely ahead here. He's not insanely far ahead. Well, now he kind of is. Pyroblast is a good one, because one of Ephraim's best outs was just drawing Lotus and just casting a Jace. But now that that's no longer an option, is going to be a little tougher.
The chat is suggesting that Dave is on Keeper.
Yeah, 4-color control, whatever you want to call it. Chains of Mephistopheles. Wow, that is a card.
Would you like to explain to the crowd what Chains of Mephistopheles does?
If you would draw a card except for the first one in your draw step, you have to discard a card before you draw it, and if you don't have cards to discard, you just mill the top of your deck instead. Basically, it turns all card drawing into looting.
Right, so it hoses Treasure Cruises. It's also does it combo with Dak as well as it looks like it does?
Yeah. Dak Vaden becomes a Hymn to Turok, essentially.
They draw 2 and discard 4.
Becomes a Wistful, whatever the card is from Future Sight. Where they draw 2, then discard 4.
Chains of Mephistopheles.
That is sweet.
Jeez. That's awesome.
Looks like we're going to game 3 pretty soon here.
Yeah, it does.
I have not seen this combo happen before.
No, neither have I. Eric's trying to figure out whether he should Gush in response somehow. He can't get himself in the library through the chains, can he?
No, there's no way. I mean, Eric is almost in the spot where how much more does he want to show Dave? He's going to have to be empty-handed. I mean, technically, Eric could just, I guess, draw... No, he couldn't even draw an artifact and tinker. He can't draw 2 cards a turn. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, I mean, he could hypothetically library on Dave's turn and dodge the chains that way, but he's not going to get to 7 through this combo.
No, there's no ways. And Dave also has double Pyroblast in hand. Not that Eric knows about that.
Yeah. Wow. Dak Vaden, Chains of Mephistopheles. Well, Eric hasn't conceded. He's willing to play it out a little longer. He is giving information away. There's a Forbidden Orchard that...
Eric could just draw an Oath of Druids.
Oh, sure.
Though,
that is true.
Oddly enough, if Eric played Oath, Dave could Ultimate Dak and then Pyroblast whatever Eric gets off Oath and steal it. It's a reason that Pyroblast is actually stronger. I'm surprised Dave has Red Blast in his deck.
Yeah, he must have more.
It plays around Cabal Therapy, I think, is part of the reason.
Yeah, I mean, he could have a Gifts Ungiven. He probably doesn't have Gifts. It can't be misdirected is the other advantage, but with Dak in your deck, it seems like the ability to target anything you want is going to come up way more often.
Yeah, that seems pretty relevant. That was an interesting game. I did not foresee...
that was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I have not seen a Chains of Mephistopheles in play for a long time.
No, I saw people talking about it at Eternal Weekend, at Vintage Champs. People were
Just
talking
to stop
about
Treasure Cruise, I guess?
Yeah, basically. But I don't think I ever saw one in play.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So we go to game 3.
That's what it sounds like. And Ephro has to decide whether he wants Oath of Druids or not, because it's got a lot of liabilities. But on the other hand, it is a card that just wins him the game if at very low cost.
If your opponent's playing Deathrite Shaman, don't you want Oath against Deathrite Shaman decks?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, if they've got Deathrite Shaman, they've got Dark Confidant. Dave's got.
Yeah, he saw Snapcaster.
Did he see the Snapcaster? Did it actually get played?
Dave discarded it to Dak and pitched it to Force of Will. So.
Oh, sure. Right. So he knows his opponent's got like a dozen creatures.
Yeah, I would play it, even though you still get Abrupt Decayed and Grafdigger's Caged. Again, the opportunity cost of playing Oath is not incredibly high. Like, you end up with like a Gristlebrand in your deck that you wouldn't want, but other than that, I think It's still fine.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you want the Oaths.
So,
I just want to see what happens now. We're gonna we may get to see a lot of games of this, and I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, there's some pretty swingy cards here. The thing is, even though Dave's cards do efficiently interact with Ephro's, if Ephro ever gets something off, Dave is pretty dead. So that's kind of how these matchups tend to go.
Sure. Let's go to the game. All right. How are these draws?
Well, I saw Dave had a Lotus. Ephro has a hand with a lot of mana.
Wow, a Lotus and a Ruby.
But not a ton to do with it. If you can play a Dak, but Lotusing out Dak isn't super exciting.
Right. It's not the end of the world. Is that a Nature's Claim on the left?
Yeah. Dave's got a lot of aggressive stuff.
Eric's got Gush and some jewelry. Is he playing the Pearl?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Huh.
So I imagine Eric's going to want to Time Walk on turn 1 to set up a potential turn 2 Gush. This isn't a fantastic hand. I think it's a keepable one. I don't, like I said, I don't love it, but it's a hand with a decent amount of lands, and you end up, seeing an extra card off Time Walk, and then you can Gush without too much repercussions just because you have so many lands in play and Moxes.
Sure. Looks like that is the plan.
You could also just draw Jace and just cast it here.
Sure. How about Tinker? You can just cast Tinker. Although that would get run into a Force of Will.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate, because we saw at least one Thoughtseize out of Ephro.
Uh-huh.
You could Gush here.
Yeah, float
look
2.
for a Thoughtseize, and then if you hit a Thoughtseize, Tinker.
I like that line.
Looks like Ephro's not running it though.
Okay. He just wants to build up more mana.
Actually, the Tinker plan would not look all that great, depending on what his target is against a hand of Dak and Echoing Truth.
Yeah, we don't know what the target is yet. Oh, Dak, yeah. But there's Dak, there's Nature's Claim, there's Echoing Truth. I guess Inkwell still beats all 3 of those?
Inkwell is what you'd be looking at here.
We have no idea which target he has.
Ephro can also hardcast Gush next turn if he wants to.
Oh, sure.
Dave just running out the Dak.
Yeah, it does go for the Lotus into Dak.
Yeah, that's actually fine for Ephro.
Depending on what his Tinker target is.
It's true. That makes Tinker potentially worse, but I don't think floating mana and the problem I have with Gushing defensively is you end up with this mana floating that you can't use and all these cards in your hand with all your lands in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't love when that ends up happening. Looks like Ephro is going to run it, though.
Really?
Well, he's fetching in response.
Yeah, there's no reason to do that if he's not planning to Gush. Dave should let the Gush resolve, right?
Yeah, I don't think trading Force for 2 random cards is good.
Now Eric is going to Brainstorm, presumably.
That I wouldn't be surprised if Dave misstepped.
Still got the Echoing Truth. This is force card, so. Misstep back, the usual dance. What does Brainstorm find?
What Eric's hoping for is a grip full of blue cards.
Yeah.
I didn't quite get there.
Not much. He found a fetch land where he gets to shuffle away one of these.
So Dave presumably is just going to steal the Mox Pearl here.
Yeah, and I think that's why Eric actually chose to fight.
Though that's, in terms of Tinker, that's not necessarily bad. Though Eric did want to tap that there.
Sure.
Because you could Tinker now, and then Dak can't steal immediately. Dak has to wait a turn.
That is true. Land, Mox, Tinker. Do you just go for that here, or is he going to preordain?
I would just Tinker here. I mean, you're in the spot of just, I think, wanting to go for it, but looks like Eric has other designs. He could be worried about a potential Force of Will still. I mean, Dave still has 3 cards in
Sure.
hand.
Yeah, that draw doesn't do anything other than Tinker. I would have been tempted, just like you were. And now Dak goes up where he can start stealing again.
Yeah, the problem I have with not Tinkering there is you have a 1-turn window where Tinker's actually good.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't mind, using that window.
And he drew Chains of Mephistopheles, and I'm like, wow, that's so good here.
Yeah, he doesn't have black yet, so he's going to have to wait at least a turn. But he can still Wasteland. He's got Force ready. Dave's deck looks pretty good for this matchup.
That's true.
Well, Flusterstorm means that Ifro might be able to defend the Tinker here.
How does he defend it from Dak, though?
Yeah. Well, he's got...
Oh, Abrupt Decay hits Dak.
If Dave doesn't draw black immediately, then... negate, jeez. Then Ifro does have Abrupt Decay into Tinker with Flusterstorm, which he might be able to set up. It's going to take him a few turns here, but he might also just... be in pretty good shape after Abrupt Decaying Dak, because then Dave isn't necessarily doing much anyway.
Right.
Because Dave still can't even cast that Deathrite Shaman.
Wow. He's on 2 of his 4 colors.
Yeah, and I imagine Dave
just
discarding down to counters and chains.
Yep. Negate, huh?
So yeah, I think if you're Ifro, you want to just kill that Dak as soon as you can.
Do you play a Mox to do it? Because if he goes Mox Tropical, he can kill it upkeep before the Mox can get stolen.
Yeah, I don't think Dave's going to counter Mox Jet. He has to play the Mox Jet in order to do that.
Makes sense. And then decay Dak upkeep?
Yeah, I think you just wait till upkeep. There's no reason not to wait. There's not much that can stop Echoing Decay, but you might as well wait. It's just good for him. Like, you're not gushing in response here.
Mm-hmm. There is the Abrupt Decay on the deck.
Dave's still hoping to draw Black Source here, though at this point the Chains is a lot less threatening.
Chains got a lot less good, for sure. Wow, and Deathrite Shaman, he still can't cast it.
So I think Ifro's probably going to go for the Tinker here and have it not work. But that's not incredibly bad for him. I mean, it's not great because he loses the Tinker, but they're still in a pretty even board state then. And Ifro does have the Gush. He might be able to gush into something relevant here.
Wow, David's position looked so good 3 turns ago.
Yeah, Abrupt Decay is a pretty strong card in this matchup.
It's also the color screw has hurt him too, for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, you're playing a deck that has red, blue, black, and green cards in it, and Wastelands, so...
I understand either green or black would have gotten the other via the Deathrite Shaman, and he did plus the Dak, twice?
Yeah.
For 4 extra cards?
Ifro's really hoping Dave negates here. Or force. Well, obviously forces, but...
Would you negate if you're David?
I don't love doing it, actually. So that
negate there.
The problem is Efro has so many cards in hand. He still has 4 other cards in hand.
Well, 2 of them are land. It's a 2-for-1.
Yeah. I really don't think Efro wants to Flusterstorm here, but you're about to go for a Tinker, presumably.
Agreed. Yeah, no, I think you're happy you got the negate, and now you can go hope. Dave should be down to what? Dave could have a Force of Will and a Pyro. Is the scenario where you get screwed?
One thing that we're potential, I mean, if Efro has Oaths in here, he might not have a Tinker target, though I don't think that's super likely.
Yeah, you just hooked up a giant artifact, dude.
Yeah, I mean, well, I didn't think Efro was going to be able to battle through DAC, Negate, Force of Will, and Echoing Truth, but the way things played out, it looks like he is.
Yeah.
And Dave already has an Echoing Truth and a DAC down, so he needs to draw one of those cards immediately, depending on what Efro is getting.
Right. Wow. Eric Froehlich. It's a Blightsteel.
I suppose a black or green source buys Dave a turn here.
Death Ray Shaman can soak up 2 points of trample damage.
Yep. And Negate doesn't do it.
Not going to do it. Blightsteel Colossus.
And it looks like
Eric's got all the old school victory conditions. Tendrils of Agony and Blightsteel Colossus?
Yeah, we haven't seen a whole lot of those. Dave has a pretty old school deck, though. Keeper's a classic.
Oh, yeah. That is true. All right, so Eric Froehlich has the first match win. He'll get a W on his side of the board. David needs to win the next 2 matches if he wants to go to the semis. I did not think Eric was going to win that game.
No, it seemed like it was pretty tough. He had to hit a bunch of draw steps and have Dave miss a bunch of turns with an active deck. So,
yep.
I mean, sometimes that happens, clearly.
Wow, so what do you think of these deck choices?
Well, Dave's deck looks pretty good in the matchup. Efro is up a match, so obviously he's still favored, I think, given that. But it feels like Dave is a favorite in the matchup.
Why is that exactly?
Just Dave has a lot of, good, cheap answers, and Efro's deck is based on, nothing incremental. He's based on casting Tendrils or Tinker. Those are both plans that don't go well when they're answered. It's not like the young Pyromancer deck where you play a Pyromancer, then they kill it, but you played 3 spells, you still can win the game. Mm-hmm. Efro's deck has to go big to win, and kind of the disruption decks are good at stopping that.
I'll buy that.
So,
all right. Thanks for hanging out with us, Luis. I think we're gonna take a short break here. We're gonna cycle Luis out. We'll bring in his opponent. See what Steve Menendian's take is on the matchup.
Good.
The 2 of them will then play.